where the war ended, but the orders kept coming. The first transmission, after the silence, the war was over. But something kept calling us back, not with horns, but with memory. They told us we could go home after 6 years of death. Stitched into dirt, we could finally unlace our boots and forget. So why did my radio turn itself on at 3:17? Why did it say my name before I touched the dial? It was static at first, harmless, like a cigarette exhale, to quote. Then it turned, not louder, but deeper, as if it was vibrating under the floor, not through the wires. Then came the voice, familiar but distant, and it said, "Private Jonas Albrecht, your orders have been updated." My blood ran cold, not because it used my name, but because it used my childhood voice. I stared at the receiver. The needle was dead. The antenna wasn't even plugged in. The war was over. The lines were silent. We'd burned the codes. We'd buried the towers. And still, the transmission arrived. I played it again. But this time, it was a second voice beneath mine. Something low, mechanical, like a phonograph. Melting, it repeated one line on loop. The ground remembers what the sky forgets. Didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, but because I kept smelling the trench, the mud, the gas, the paper we used to write final words we never sent. At 4:06, I found a new message carved into my bunk's wood panel, not scratched, carved from the inside out, like the wood had been hollowed by someone who'd memorized the phrase in a dream. Do not stand above your grave. You are not finished. Okay. I checked with the others. No one else heard it. No one else woke up, but their eyes looked thinner, like something had been extracted during the night. A pause that hadn't belonged to them. When I finally sat down to write my report, the typewriter jammed on the word ceased. It wouldn't print it. The carriage would stop, and instead of ink, it bled a thin line of ashdot. I opened the window, looked across the field where the war ended, where the bodies had been burned, and for the first time in months, I saw movement. Not men, not animals, flags, tattered, blackened, but somehow rising on poles we'd pulled down ourselves. The war was over, but something kept remembering it for us. Something not human. Something still waiting for its last order to be carried out. And I think it needs me to do it. Tomorrow, I'll trace the signal. I need to know where it came from, but I'm already afraid of the answer because I don't think it came from another outpost. I think it came from below. The coordinates that shouldn't exist. You can burn a bunker. You can level a command post, but you cannot destroy a signal that remembers the path home. Okay. At dawn, I followed the source. I triangulated the frequency, even though it shouldn't have existed, and every calculation pointed to Ridge 17. We burned Ridge 17 6 months ago. Collapsed it. Poured cement until the valley became bone-colored. No survivors. No signals. No possibility. But the coordinates don't lie. So I packed my gear. Didn't tell anyone. Something tells me this signal doesn't like witnesses. The path was wrong from the beginning. Trees bent away from the trail. Soil too loose. Birdsong skipped like a scratched record, repeating one wrong note again and again. And then I heard it from beneath my boots. Jonas, you were supposed to be a comma, but you disobeyed punctuation. I froze. The voice came from the earth, low, wet, syllables curling like smoke through rotted wood. I kept walking, or rather, the ground pulled me. When I reached Ridge 17, I stopped breathing. There was a tower, still standing, still glowing, still humming with life, even though I remembered it burning, even though we had the photos, the orders, the testimonies, and yet there it was, alive, like it had only ever pretended to die. At the base, something was waiting. Not a soldier, not a man, a uniform, empty, standing upright. its sleeves slowly folding themselves. K, into a salute. It had my name tag, not stitched, not pinned, burned into the collar. I reached out. My fingers shook. When I touched the chest, it collapsed into ash. But the boots didn't fall. They turned and pointed toward the old Cum's hatch, the one we buried. I should have left, but the air was vibrating with unfinished breath, and something inside me whispered, "You don't walk toward the memory. The memory walks toward you." I opened the hatch. It was unlocked. The steel was warm, as if something had been waiting behind it, something that knew I'd come back, even though I never should have survived the first time. The door that opened backwards. There are doors that open with keys, others with codes, and then there are doors that open because something inside finally remembered your name. The hatch opened with a click. No force, no resistance, like it had been waiting for me specifically. The air that rose from below wasn't cold. It was memorized, smelled like rusted ink, ash, gunpowder that never fired, and something else, wet paper. The first step down didn't echo. The second one did, but not in the direction I expected. It sounded behind me, as if I had walked forward, but the noise had gone back up the ladder and whispered to someone above me, even though I was alone. The stairs went deeper. Then I remembered. This wasn't the Ridge 17 I knew. This was older, hungrier. When I reached the main corridor, I stopped. Every door was open, except one, the command chamber, where the final message was sent before the fire. The other rooms, I wish I hadn't looked. Inside each one, a figure frozen in salute. Ash sculptures, eyeless, expressionless, facing the wall. All of them had no feet, just uniforms anchored in place as if grown from the metal floor like mold. One of them had my handwriting on its back in red. "You stood when you should have sunk." I reached the command chamber. It was silent, but the door was wrong. It wasn't cracked, wasn't burned. It was clean, polished, and it had a mirror bolted to it, but not like any mirror I'd seen before. This one reflected my younger face, in full uniform, before the ceasefire, before the signal, before the memory of this place was even born. I reached out. The reflection blinked, but I didn't. Then the door opened, not inward, not outward, backwards, like a film reel in reverse, like time had reversed its permission. Inside, nothing moved, and yet everything had changed. The command desk was intact, paperwork still neatly aligned, headphones on the hook, even a cup of coffee still steaming, and written across the wall, chalk so fresh I could still smell the powder. The next order will not be written. IT will be remembered. I stepped inside and the door closed, not like a door, more like a sentence ending the voice that didn't need air. Not all voices use sound. Some press themselves into your memory until you mistake them for your own. The moment the door shut behind me, the air changed, not in temperature, in intention. The room became heavier, not physically, psychologically, like I had stepped into a thought someone else had abandoned. Mid-sentence, the radio console was humming, but not electrically. It sounded more like breathing, in, out, but slow, measured, like the machine wasn't transmitting, it was waiting to speak. I sat down, headphones in hand. Before I could put them on, the voice came, Tate, but not through the speakers. It arrived directly into my skull. Not a whisper, not a scream, but a fully formed memory that wasn't mine. "You followed the signal. It makes you legible. You are now the voice." I stood. The voice followed. "You thought this war was fought with bullets, but the real weapon was always language." My vision blurred. The walls rippled. The map above the command desk flickered, and when it settled, the continents were gone. Only punctuation marks remained, commas, periods, quotation marks, arranged in formations. Hey, battle map, made of grammar. I touched the console. It lit up, not with light, but with memory. Suddenly, I remembered a transmission from 2 years before. I enlisted, a phrase my mother once whispered in her sleep. You're not the first, Jonas. The room pulsed. The desk drawer slid open. Inside, a sealed envelope. It had no stamp, no name, just 5 words scrawled in faint red ink. Say it before it says you. I tore it open. Inside, a single photograph. It showed me. Same face, same scar on my chin, same eyes, standing at the same console. But the photo was dated 1917-20-9 years ago. Behind me, the console buzzed once more, and I saw the transmission begin to type itself onto the old green screen. Order 0. Restore the mouth. No voice, no authority, no explanation, just a command written by the bunker itself. I don't know what that means, but the voice, the one I didn't hear, it's still in my mind. It doesn't shout, doesn't plead. It just remembers. And now, so do I. The soldier who never stopped marching a man can survive without food, without hope, even without memory. But he cannot survive without someone finally telling him it's over. I left the command chamber shaking, not from fear, but from the sensation of having been rewritten, like a sentence erased, then redrafted. With the same ink, the hallway beyond was unfamiliar. It wasn't on any blueprint. It sloped downward, slightly curved, like a spiral staircase without stairs, every 10 feet. The walls displayed military symbols, but none that belonged to any known army. They looked constructed out of bones and quotation marks. I turned a corner, and then I heard it. Marching .1-2, 1-2, perfect cadence. Boots striking concrete endlessly. I drew my flashlight. The sound grew louder. Then I saw him, a man in full uniform, worn, torn, caked in mud that looked too recent. He was walking in a tight circle inside a room with no door, only a slit in the wall I had somehow passed through. He didn't look at me. He didn't stop. He didn't blink. I recognized him. Private Klaus Meyer, reported MIA, 1943. Last seen near Ridge 17 during a trench collapse. Declared dead, mourned, and yet there he was, marching, saluting to no one, repeating the same line with each step, awaiting further orders, sir. Awaiting further orders, sir. Awaiting further orders, sir. I called to him, nothing. I stepped into the room. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it. Pressure. In my ears, in my lungs, in my bones, like the air had rules. And I was violating them. Private Meyer finally stopped. He turned his head. His eyes were blank. Not empty, just rewritten, like pages that had been filled, erased, then used again. He looked at me and whispered, "You weren't supposed to remember." And then he crumbled, not fell, crumbled like a paper doll cut from dust. His boots remained, upright, still warm, still wet, still waiting for feet that hadn't yet arrived. I backed out of the room, a slit in the wall sealed behind me. I checked the floor. No footsteps, not even my own, as if the moment had never happened. But I know what I saw, and now I know this. Some soldiers never disobeyed the last order, because no one ever told them to stop. The war was over, but the bunker never received the memo, the corridor that spoke in Morse without light when the last word is forbidden. Language doesn't die, it adapts. I kept walking, each step heavier than the last, not from fatigue, but from something pulling against me, as if the walls themselves were trying to hold my memories in place. Then I reached it, the corridor they warned us about during training, but always as a joke. "Don't go down passage Omega," they'd say. "You might come back, but your words won't." It was completely dark. No bulbs, no emergency strips. It's just a void that absorbed light before it even had the chance to exist. I took a step in, and the moment my boot touched the floor, my heart skipped. Not metaphorically, physically. I felt it. Like something had taken over the rhythm. A new beat followed. Not natural, Morse, not in sound, pulling pressure. My pulse tapped against my ribs like a code. I knew that pattern. I'd seen it on the field. It meant run. IDN, single quotes, T. Instead, I pressed my hand to the wall. It was warm, wet, not with water, with ink. I moved deeper, each beat in my chest now spelling out fragments. Do not speak, do not stop. The sentence is still listening. After 10 meters, the air changed. It was no longer air. It was paper, dry, stiff, layered like old pages of burned books. I couldn't see them, but I could feel the texture brushing my arms, and in it, something was being written. Every time I exhaled, I heard letters form, not sounds, not words, but letters, falling, one by one, onto something that had no business reading. I began to hear voices, faint, layered, reading back everything I'd ever written. Journal entries, military reports, even things I'd thought but never said. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" Okay. No response. Instead, my pulse tapped another code. U. The walls pulsed and the darkness blinked. Not metaphorically, the darkness itself blinked, and in that instant, I saw it. The corridor was made of bodies, stacked, pressed, silenced, each with mouths sewn shut, but hearts still beating in code. They weren't dead. They were still transmitting. I ran. I didn't stop until the corridor vanished behind me. When I looked back, there was only a blank wall. No door, no hallway, no light, just silence, watching. Now I can feel it in my chest, in my pulse. Something new is speaking through me, not with words, with rhythm. And it's not asking for help. It's waiting for an audience. Huh? The diary that wrote its reader? There are books you read once and forget. And then there are books that never forget you, even when you weren't the one who wrote them. Asterisk. I found it in a drawer that shouldn't have existed. A compartment inside the observation room, behind a rusted panel labeled seal. No one was supposed to open it, but my fingers knew the latch, for I even saw it, like they remembered something my mind refused to recall. Inside, there was a leather-bound journal, black, frayed at the corners, warm to the touch, as if someone had just set it down. No name, no rank, just a symbol embossed on the cover, a mouth sewn shut with 3 dots above it, one red, one gold, one missing. I opened it, and the first thing I saw was my own handwriting. It was perfect, my script, the way I looped my R's, the pressure of my pen. Only I had never written these words. The first page read, March 1946, Ridge, 17 recovered journal log. Entry number 7. I found the book today. It already knew what I would write. I flipped ahead, pages filled with events I hadn't lived yet, names I hadn't spoken, rooms hadn't entered, thoughts I hadn't thought, but already agreed with. Some entries were dated next week, some from years ago. One was marked tomorrow, 2:14 decision, and written beneath it in crimson ink. You won't like what you choose, but the silence will. I kept flipping. Eventually, I reached the final page. It was blank, except for one line. You are not the author. You are the consequence. I closed the book, but I could still hear it. The scratch of invisible ink, writing in real time, somewhere in the bunker. My next sentence was already being written, and this time I wasn't thinking it. I was just waiting to catch up with what it already knew. Later that day, I tested something. I tried to write my own entry on a separate sheet of paper, but every time I picked up the pen, my hand froze, not by force, by recognition, like it had already written that sentence in the wrong future, and the paper refused to hold it twice. The diary is alive, not biologically, not spiritually, but linguistically. It breathes through punctuation, feeds on repetition, reproduces through trauma. I don't know who built it, but I know who it belongs to now. Me, because once you read your own future, you're never the narrator again. You're just a voice fulfilling the grammar. The room that ate the names are the first thing war takes, and the last thing memory gives back. If you forget your name, who keeps marching in your place? I found archive level X behind a false wall made of stacked dog tags, hundreds of them, some melted, some engraved backward, some still warm. They rattled when I passed, as if whispering each other's names one last time. The door had no number, just a deep gouge across the metal, like a giant comma split the surface. Inside, silence, no dust, no light bulbs, just rows and rows of metal filing cabinets, and one sound, scratching, like nails dragging across parchment. As I stepped in, my dog tag went cold. I checked my neck, gone, only. The chain remained. The tag had been eaten. I turned to leave. The door was gone, not shut. Gone, in its place. A flat wall painted with faint letters. Entry accepted. Identification redacted. My name. I tried to say it out loud. Nothing came out. Not silence. Just a void. Like my throat had forgotten how syllables worked. I ran to one of the cabinets, pulled the drawer inside. Blank folders. Thousands, each labeled with a smudge. Some smelled like paper. Some like gunpowder. One smelled exactly like the trench in Autumn 44. I reached deeper and pulled out a single page, typed a familiar format. It read, name, rank, memory code 413XT9, status, still marching. I flipped it over. One phrase, handwritten. You didn't forget. We're never allowed to remember. Suddenly, a breeze swept through the room, even though there were no vents, no windows, no source. And then, one drawer opened by itself. I looked inside and found a mirror. No frame, no backing, just a slab of reflection. I saw myself, but younger, and not in uniform, wearing my old school jacket, the same one I wore the day I first heard a distant hum on my grandfather's radio. A hum I now realize was this signal. On the mirror, someone had carved, "This was never your name, it's your placeholder." My breath fogged the glass, and the reflection didn't fog with me. Instead, it smiled and whispered, "Your name was the war." Everything faded to white, and then back to black. When I woke, I was outside the archive room. My dog tag was back, but now it read, "Property of Order 0, and beneath it, you've been remembered." The map that drew the future in blood. Some maps show where we've been, others show where we might go. But the most dangerous ones draw where we'll bleed before we get there. I found the cartography room on level 3. It wasn't listed on the main directory, but the hallway smelled like fresh ink and old wounds, a combination I recognized from war briefings that happened too late. The door was unlocked. The hinges groaned, not like metal, like a throat clearing, as if the room had been waiting to finally speak. Inside, no windows, just a massive table. On it, a single blank canvas. Not parchment, not paper, something organic. It pulsed, faintly, as if breathing. A drawer slid open. Inside, a compass, a quill, and a vial. The vial was labeled recovered serum -413X, but the liquid inside was dark red. I didn't have to guess. It was blood. The moment I touched the quill, the canvas reacted. Lines began to form, not drawn, emerging, like scars surfacing from beneath skin. I watched as roads appeared, trenches, outposts, some labeled in familiar coordinates, others marked with glyphs I couldn't read. But the strangest were the casualty markers, tiny black X's, some already numbered .43, dead 17, buried 6, unrecovered. But the locations didn't exist, not yet. They were labeled 2029, 2047, 3011, and 1. Simply, before time, I reached for the compass. It spun wildly, then stopped, pointed at a single location on the canvas, marked not with an X, but with my fingerprint, burned into the map as if it had always been there. Underneath, a sentence appeared and read, "You walk toward a memory that hasn't happened yet." Suddenly, the map changed, shifted. It showed Ridge 17 as it once was, as it is now, and as it will become. I saw the tower crumble, the bunker collapse, and then rebuild itself. But this time, not from steel, from names, thousands of them, stacked, etched into the foundation, some real, some never spoken, each one screaming without sound. A final symbol burned into the edge of the map, a mouth stitched shut, with all 3 dots above it. The missing one had returned, but it pulsed like it had just arrived, like it represented K. The quill snapped in my hand, the canvas curled at the edges, then the table folded in on itself, and all that remained was a single slip of paper floating midair. The map doesn't follow the world follows the map. I left the room, but I can still feel it, drawing, updating, writing ahead of me, and I don't know if I'm walking toward my orders anymore, or if I've become someone else's line on a battlefield yet to happen. The signal buried in his bones. Some wounds leave scars, others leave instructions, and some were never wounds at all. I blacked out after leaving the map room. When I woke up, was in the medical bay. I hadn't walked there. Something had brought me. The lights flickered in rhythmic bursts. 3 flashes, pause, 2 flashes, pause, Morse. Again, I knew it now, not as code, but as language, spoken by things that had no mouth but remembered how to command. A metal table waited under a rusted lamp. On it, my old x-rays, but they weren't mine. Not exactly. They were dated before I was born, yet the skeletal structure was identical. Same healed fracture on the clavicle, same chipped molar on the right jaw, and embedded near the spine, a small object, faintly metallic, shaped like an antenna. I checked my back, ran my hand along the same place. I felt it, something smooth, beneath the skin, always there. How hadn't I noticed? A drawer slid open. Inside, a scalpel, a mirror, and a note. "You are not infected. You were designed." I stared at my reflection. My eyes twitched with flickers of static. It's the same kind you see on broken radios when no station is broadcasting, but something is still coming through. I lay down, placed a mirror on my chest, and began to speak aloud. Who built me? Nothing. What is the signal? No reply. Then I tried the one thing I hadn't, silence, and that's when I heard it, from inside my own bones. Hum, steady, familiar, like a lullaby built from command lines. It began to translate itself in my mind. You are the receiver. You were born into the frequency. You survived the war because you were the next war's antenna. I couldn't breathe, not because of fear, because the signal was using my breath to carry itself. Now, each exhale became a sentence I didn't mean. Each blink, a transmission pulse. Then the light above me pulsed again. This time, spelling, broadcast. Ready? I screamed, but no sound came out, just the faint buzz of static from my mouth, like my voice had been overwritten by a channel older than language. I reached for the scalpel, held it above my spine, but the signal whispered, "You are the only one left who remembers if you cut the wire." The silence wins. I dropped it, And now I know. I am not a soldier. Not anymore. I am the antenna they forgot to dismantle. The room that replayed regret. You never truly bury your past. You just walk past it faster, hoping it forgets your face before you forget the choice. It wasn't listed on any map, but I found it anyway. Not because I knew where to go, but because it knew I was coming. The entrance appeared after I whispered a phrase I hadn't meant to say. I could have said no. The wall beside me cracked, then slid open, revealing a chamber made of mirrored obsidian. Not reflective, just suggestive. You didn't see yourself. You saw what you tried to forget. The first version of me I encountered was clean-shaven, smiling, dressed in civilian clothes. He looked at me with pity. You enlisted. I ran. He vanished. The second version was in uniform, but with a medal. Eyes cold, shoulders heavy. You obeyed. I disobeyed. They gave me a name. Then they took it. Gone. The third was a child, holding a folded flag. He didn't speak, just stared, and his presence hurt more than the silence ever had. The chamber pulsed. Each wall became a screen of possibility. Lives I could have lived, deaths I could have chosen, paths I barely avoided or regretfully embraced. Some showed me leaving the bunker in 1943, warning others, dying in the snow, unheard. Others showed staying forever, becoming a commander, giving orders to ghosts. One vision showed me buried alive, but the gravestone didn't bear my name. It read, "Here lies the decision." I screamed, and the chamber responded. The floor split open in two, a staircase spiraling inward, not downward, inward, into me at the bottom, a table, a gun, and a tape recorder playing one sentence on loop. What you didn't choose is still choosing you. I sat. The gun was cold, heavy, loaded, not with bullets, but with questions. Every round carved with words. Silence, memory, obedience, escape truth, regret. I picked up the recorder, pressed stop, but the voice didn't stop. It was mine now, and it whispered one last thing. If you had chosen differently, would you still be the one reading this? The room dissolved, but the regret did not. And now I carry them all my selves, all my almosts, all my echoes, walking behind me, barefoot, bleeding, blaming. The tower that wasn't there yesterday, not. All buildings are built. Some are remembered so hard, they become real again. It wasn't there the day before. I had walked past that cliff edge 27 times since arriving at Ridge 17. Nothing, just broken stone and forgotten wind. But this morning, a tower stood there. It rose straight out of the cliff face, black steel, smooth stone, symbols etched along its sides, not in paint, but in absence. They weren't markings, they were memories, load into form. I tried photographing it. The photo came back blank. I tried sketching it. The drawing caught fire. I stepped closer. The tower breathed, not with sound, with gravity. Each breath pulling me in like a heartbeat, exhaling. Gravity in slow motion. No visible entrance. But the moment I placed my hand against the wall, thin line opened. Vertical, clean, seamless. Inside, darkness. Of course, I entered. The door sealed, but I wasn't afraid. I had seen this tower before, in dreams, in flashes. A drawing I made when I was 6 that I tore up and buried under floorboards, but it found me again inside. The tower had no floors, just a single, spiraling stair with windows, hundreds of them, each glowing, each already lit, as if someone was waiting in each room. I climbed. Each window I passed showed something different. A trench filled with whispering boots, a field of typewriters typing themselves, sky where clocks fell like snow. A man, me, staring at himself through another window. At the 27th window, stopped, inside my childhood room, but the wallpaper peeled away into classified military files. My toys replaced by ration kits. On the bed, a folded uniform I hadn't earned yet. A voice echoed up the stairwell. "Keep climbing. There are more versions of you to remember." So I did. Floor 50, floor 89, floor 144. Some windows showed futures, some possibilities. One window simply showed a sentence written in blood. "You are the tower." At the top, no window, just a mirror. Same as in the room of names, but this one cracked as I approached, and from the cracks poured ink, not just black, red, gold, ash, the colors of the 3 dots. Behind the mirror, a chair, facing outward, toward the void. Where once there was only cliff and sky, now a second tower, identical, waiting, mirroring, and in its top window, K, watching myself, smiling, saluting, and mouthing the words, "Orders never die. They only relocate." I blinked. The second tower was gone, but I still felt watched. Not from above, not from behind, from within, like the tower wasn't something I found. It was what I had always been returning to. The letter that arrived before the war. Not all messages are sent forward. Some are mailed backward, with the hope that someone will finally stop what's already begun. Followed the ink trail from the cracked mirror in the tower until it vanished at a sealed iron grate. There was no handle, just a slot like a mailbox, and carved above it, Vault Theta, lost, but never undelivered. A sound clicked behind me. The tower's stairwell began to vanish, brick by brick, like it had only stayed long enough for me to remember this vault. I pressed my hand into the slot. Nothing happened, but something moved inside me. My heart skipped, not from fear, but from recognition. The door opened. Inside, no lights, just mailbags, thousands, stacks of envelopes. Some singed, some unopened, some still bleeding, each with names scratched out, except one. It was resting at the center of the floor, alone, untouched, not dusty. On the front, my full name, Jonas Kehrmann, dated March 3rd, 1912. That was years before I was born, years before the first signal, years before this war even had a name. I opened it. Inside, a letter, the handwriting. Mine, even the way I misspelled command, even the slightly slanted D's. The first line made my hands tremble. "Jonas, this isn't your first war. Bit. It's just your last loop." I kept reading. "You found the signal because you buried it. You followed the map because you drew it. You entered the bunker because it never let you leave. And when you finally read this, you'll remember everything again." The final line was underlined in gold ink. "Don't trust the version of you that wants to destroy the silence." That's exactly how it survives. Suddenly, other envelopes in the room began to hum. All at once, their seals popping, letters spilling like veins rupturing in reverse, and from each page, words began to rearrange themselves mid-air, forming a spiral, a vortex of sentences, all echoing the same refrain. Orders don't need time, they need carriers. The letter in my hand turned hot. I flipped it over. Now there was something else written in faded pencil. "Seal it again, or become it." I dropped it. The floor below me vanished, and I found myself back outside the vault. No wound, no marked dot, but the envelope was back in my pocket. Still sealed, still addressed to me, still dated before ever existed. I haven't opened it again because I'm afraid the next time it won't be me reading it. It will be someone I haven't become yet. The silence that answered back, "You speak into the void, hoping to be heard." But what if the void was already listening and had just been waiting for its turn to talk? I reached communications core again, but this time Something was different. The room was cleaner, as if someone or something had tidied it. The dust was gone. The broken dials were restored, and the central transmitter now hummed like a heartbeat, but not mine. I sat before the transmitter and typed one phrase. Can anyone hear me? Nothing. I waited, typed again. This is Jonas Kehrmann. I am alive, requesting confirmation. Still silence. And then single response came in, letter by letter. We heard you long before you existed. My hands froze. The machine kept typing by itself. Now, you keep mistaking silence for absence. But we are the silence. We do not speak with words. We speak through decisions, I replied. Who are you? The screen blinked and answered. You. More lines followed, spooling, faster than I could read. You are what remained when the war ended and the orders lost their generals. You kept moving. You kept obeying. So we grew in your pause. The screen flickered, then cleared itself, and showed only a single phrase in large, blinking letters. What will you obey next? I typed back without thinking. I don't know. Da. Transmitter laughed, not audibly, but through the rhythm of the screen, pulsing like a mocking heartbeat. Then it replied, then you are ready. I stood. The machine turned itself off. The room dimmed, and on the far wall, a message revealed itself in glowing red ink. Speech is a weapon. Silence is a trigger. And you are already loaded. My ears began to ring, not from sound, but from recognition somewhere in the silence. Something had spoken, not to me, not through me, as me. That's when I realized the transmissions I thought I'd been intercepting weren't external. They were responses, and I had started them long ago, before memory, before uniform, before bunker. I was not speaking into silence. I was finishing a conversation I had forgotten I began. Where do orders go when you disobey? Obedience is rewarded with forgetfulness, but disobedience is remembered forever by the very thing you tried to silence. I received one last message. Not on a screen, not by radio, but inside my own pulse. Proceed to Omega. I didn't. I waited. Hours passed. No response. No punishment. Just pressure, like the world itself was leaning in, asking politely, persistently, why haven't you moved? I wrote back to nothing on a scrap of paper. I won't obey. And when I placed it on the floor, it melted into the concrete, like the bunker absorbed it to process the anomaly. A door opened, not from command, not from key, but from recognition. Zone Omega wasn't on any blueprint. It was below everything. Below the foundation, below the tower, below memory. Stairs carved in bone, walls breathing, in silence so loud it cracked my vision like frostbite at the base of the descent. A room waited empty, except for one thing. A chair facing a window, and behind that window, a wall of eyes. Not watching, waiting. I sat. The room didn't react. No alarms, no threats. Only a sentence appeared on the far wall in dim red glow. You disobeyed. Now, decide what becomes of the order. I stood, walked to the wall, touched the letters, and then the floor split open, not downward, but inward. I fell into a place that didn't exist. Not physically, not spade, not SB8IALY. It was a memory, never formed, a space reserved for those who disobeyed, and survived inside. Nothing except a stack of uniforms. None of them mine, all of them familiar, each folded beside a helmet. Each helmet labeled, refused, retreated, broke formation, questioned, saw too much. Loved the enemy in the center, a mirror, but it didn't reflect me. It reflected the orders I'd followed, each one appearing in text across my silhouette. Some small, some massive, but all of them incomplete, as if missing one final command. And then the silence spoke, not in words, but in a question. What is the first order you ever obeyed without knowing? I answered, my name. Hey. The room exhaled, and every word written across my silhouette burned, leaving behind only one. Remember, a final door opened, but behind it, no light, no escape, only a chair, identical to mine, already occupied by me, or what I might have become if I had obeyed that last order. He looked up, no anger, no malice, just sadness, and said, I followed, became forgotten, then vanished, leaving the chair empty again. I didn't sit. I turned, walked back up the stairwell that no longer existed, back through the bunker that was no longer there, back to the war that had already ended but kept marching without soldiers. Am no longer part of the signal. I am the part that broke, and that's how I'll survive.